Hello and welcome to Fix My Flood, another edition, a chance for us to sit down and ask the experts, and we definitely have the experts with us today. Scott Galden of Simmons Flooring and Total Renovation is with us again, and he's got a friend, a cohort, and an expert in the field for sure. Scott, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Chris. How are you today?
I'm doing peachy, as I said earlier, just wonderful. It's beautiful outside, and yet people are still dealing with water, and they're dealing with all sorts of crazy stuff from this weather has been nuts. But we've got the Jedi Master himself with us today, don't we? Tell us a little bit about who we're going to be talking with today.
Chris, I'm really excited to have James on our podcast today. James Stopar joined us in October of last year, and it was almost like he was the perfect person that I'd been looking for all these years. James had been in the restoration business for over 20 years in Washington, owned his own business for a while, has worked for several other restoration companies, came to us with just a huge amount of industry experience. And I remember telling James in October, I said, James, we're not real busy yet, but if you'll hang with me till about February, I think we'll have this thing up and running. Next thing you know, in February, we had, Ice Mageddon, and it's been Katie bar the door ever since. So again, I'd like to introduce you to James Stopar, and James is going to be asking answering a lot of the questions we have to ask today. So welcome, James. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. You bet.
Well, those that are totally passionate about following everything that Simmons might remember James from one of the first videos you guys did. You did a little Q&A there at the showroom, and got a lot of great feedback on that. So this will probably be an expansion of that.
Yes.
I get a chance to ask some questions. We had some people send in some questions, so we're looking forward to it. So we're going to talk about 7 of the most asked questions as it relates, I think, specifically to the insurance process, because I know that's huge.
Yes.
People are dealing with that right now. Can you give us, Scott, just a little bit about where you are right now in this process? I know we talked about it just being the absolute, crazy time, and you're getting booked up. You're starting to process some of these things. And what are some of the things that are coming up from an insurance standpoint that might be a good segue into our first question?
Sure. So a lot of homeowners are now beginning to get the initial estimate back from their adjuster or whoever the insurance company has hired to provide an estimate. Now, in a lot of cases, the insurance companies are relying on the estimates that are written by the mitigation companies, mainly the dry out companies. And the problems that we're seeing in the field are these are people that don't have any experience in writing rebuilding estimates. They're just taking pictures, taking measurements, and hoping they're getting everything. And also, we're finding that a lot of the adjusters that the insurance company has flooded the market with are people that maybe don't have the level of training that they should have in writing these estimates. As a result, the initial drafts or the initial claims amounts that are coming in, we're finding they're missing a lot of things on their Xactimate estimate. Xactimate is the software that the insurance companies use for this, and we're finding that once we go in and we rewrite the estimate, that the estimate is typically the average estimate that we're writing is twice the amount that the insurance company has included in their estimate. And in some cases, it's even more than that. But our average right now is about double what the insurance companies are initially writing. And we're getting those approved by the adjuster once we provide them with the information that they need.
So you've spoken in the past about how important it is to let the consumers know that you guys use that same software. Is this an example of not only making it more convenient and just works better in their flow of information and in their workflow, but you're able to catch things? So why does that happen? What would cause a gap like that?
Well, and here's where I have been educated so well by James. So I'm gonna let James answer that question because he's got so much experience. He's run into it a lot. James, what are you finding is the big difference that customers see?
Well, so when they are getting their initial estimate from the insurance carriers, like you were saying, a lot of times they base a lot of that information off of what the mitigation contractor supplied to them. So, for instance, if they had gone in and removed wet materials in the mitigation process, they would put in for how many square feet of damaged goods they were able to remove. And so if they had 200 square feet of drywall removed from the property and so many feet of baseboard and so many feet of flooring and so forth, The insurance company only has that amount of information. So if there is 200 square feet of drywall removed, the insurance company is going to go, well, I need to put back 200 square feet of drywall. They don't know necessarily whether that wraps around a corner and follows into another room, or whether they need to apply additional square footages of paint or other line items that would go along with that. If there's existing textures and so forth that have to be blended into, or if you're tying old drywall into new, there's just a number of circumstances and line items that exist in Xactimate that you only know if you have the experience to look for those.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Well, that leads into our first question of the broadcast: is who do I pay my deductible to? Now, that at first face value seems like an obvious question to me, but apparently it can be very confusing. It's a question you get a lot. So, Scott, help us understand what's important about knowing who to pay the deductible to.
Well, the first misconception is that you owe the deductible to the insurance company. I've had a lot of customers go, well, I've got to pay my insurance company deductible. That's actually incorrect. The deductible is actually paid to the contractor that's doing the work. And I'll let maybe James elaborate on that a little bit. So,
Sure.
you know, why the deductible is an important part of the process, and knowing what your deductible is.
Yeah, so the deductible is literally the amount that the insurance carrier gets to deduct against what they owe on your claim. The other area that this gets confusing when a person is trying to determine, well, who do I pay my deductible to? It's partly because you'll have two separate contractors working on just about any given claim. You'll have the mitigation contractor that'll sometimes try to collect it, and then you'll also have the mitigation contractor that will just give their bid directly to the insurance carrier, expecting for their bill to be paid in full. And then the deductible will then go to the repair side, or the contractor that's putting all the work back into the house to bring it back to pre-loss condition.
Yeah, and because there's two contractors involved, it can be, you know, very confusing. And then the other thing is, the state of Texas 2 years ago passed a law that states that any contract, repair contract that is based on insurance, the contractor has to collect the deductible. A lot of customers come to us, say, hey, can you work things out where I don't have to pay my deductible? No, you have to pay your deductible in the state of Texas. And a lot of the insurance companies now are requiring, you know, at closeout, they're requiring us to provide them with payment documents showing that we collected the deductible. So we're, as a contractor, we've chosen to follow the law in this area. And we think that as a homeowner, that's probably the best way for you to handle the claim as well. Hey, Chris, I don't know. We're missing your audio for some reason.
Yeah, your audio's not coming through.
I tell you what, let me just go ahead and I'll take this over here. So I'm showing what.
How about that? Is that better?
There you go.
I was like, I'm going to pitch it to you on this one. How about that? Well, you sounded good out there, but go ahead. That was me muted. So just,
yeah. A big question that a lot of customers have is, what is this line in my Xactimate report? Because we'll kind of explain some of these lines in Xactimate. That's where a lot of the questions come in, is what is overhead and profit for? What does that represent? And then the other question I'll throw to James is, why are some insurance companies initially not providing overhead and profit in their claims?
Yeah, so overhead and profit is the amount or percentage of the estimate that the insurance company has agreed that contractors are owed for performing those duties on their property. So it allows us to keep the lights on, pay our bills, pay our taxes, all that kind of stuff. And then there's obviously, we make a small profit on the project. So there's the general field of line items that are involved in the estimate, and those include labor and materials for each one of those line items. And so on top of that, it leaves a little bit of overhead for us to keep our store open, and then obviously a small amount of profit for performing the services.
Well, and I think one of the challenges is the insurance companies typically don't include that line item unless you're already under contract with a contractor, right, James? If you're just if you're just Joe homeowner and you're trying to run the project, they're not going to include that in your claim.
Yeah, in fact, there's actually two separate pricing systems within Xactimate. So there's actually a homeowner-based pricing system, and then there's also a contractor-based pricing system. So contractors are obviously going to charge a little bit more for their services, being as they're professionals. A homeowner can choose to not hire a contractor and do all the work themselves, but they're going to get a lesser amount because they're not having to pay employees and insurance and all the things that go along with being a contractor and owning a business.
And I think this is real key, and everything is, a lot of homeowners feel like, boy, I've just got this small amount to work with and I've got to try to figure everything out on my own. If you hire a professional contractor, there'll be money available to pay them to handle the project for you, so you don't have to be the contractor yourself. I know I've dealt with some homeowners, they're like, no, this is what I want to do. That's fine. But if you're a homeowner that just says, look, I want somebody to take care of this, the dollars are available if you hire a professional to pay for the professional services.
Yeah, and the insurance carrier is not just going to automatically throw in overhead and profit onto an estimate that they're paying out to a homeowner until that homeowner has provided them with the information that they do want to hire a contractor and that they are going to move forward with somebody. So sometimes they will wait until they are under contract with a contractor prior to releasing those funds.
Yeah,
That's a huge secret that I think most people don't know.
yeah,
So that's just fantastic that you brought that up, and I hope people feel like it was worthwhile to tune in and to listen. These are the kind of nuggets that you're going to get that you just wouldn't know otherwise,
yeah.
which is why you want to have a professional help hold your hand through that. All right, let's jump to number 3. It says the estimate from the insurance company doesn't look like enough to cover the repairs. Well, should I deposit this check? What should I do in the meantime? How do I do it when it doesn't look like it matches? And what do I do with this money?
Yeah, that's great. We've got homeowners that are sitting there with paperwork, and they're like, I'm afraid if I deposit this check, I'm agreeing to the amount that the insurance company has said.
Mm-hmm.
So James, what's the ruling on that?
So again, if we go back to them having minimal amount of information from, say, possibly the mitigation contractor or whatnot, they can go, okay, well, I know I owe for this, I know I owe for that. Say we're talking about the 200 square feet of drywall. They're going to put in for that 200 square feet of drywall. We realize we have to pay for that. We realize we have to pay for this. And so they're going to base that initial payment based off the limited amount of information that they have and get money into the insured's hands so that they can actually have a little bit of money to move forward on their project or make a deposit with a contractor or get some materials coming or whatnot. So they have that small amount of money, and yes, they can deposit and they can use it. It was a common misconception years ago that that insurance carriers were saying, if you deposit this amount of money, that you're agreeing that the project can, that we're settling at that point, and that you're agreeing that you can get the project done for that amount of money. But what exists nowadays is a supplement process, and that typically takes a review and so forth. But an educated contractor comes in after that check has been cut to the insured and provides them with an accurate estimate, detailed enough to describe what needs to go into the project in order to bring them back to pre-loss condition before the event happens. So once the insurance carrier has that, they're able to pay based off of those items.
So go ahead and put the check in the bank. Just don't spend it on anything else. Don't.
Right. The only
We have
thing out of
seen that
pocket
happen
you have
before.
is
Okay, that
Well, it
becomes a
seems
problem.
exactly. Well, number 4 seems like a natural just outgrowth of these last 2 questions, and that's
Mhm.
what if they didn't cover the overhead and the profit? Do I have to pay that out of my pocket, or how does that work?
Go ahead, James.
No, that typically comes once you've hired a contractor. So the contractor is going to provide overhead and profit in their estimate, and once they're able to show the insurance carrier that we are under contract and we're moving forward and working together, the insurance carrier will release those funds at that time. But again, this may be a little bit redundant, but the insurance company isn't going to overpay or pay for something that you may or may not do. So they wait until you've provided them with the evidence that you are moving forward with the contractor prior to putting overhead and profit on the check that they initially sent out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Scott, do you want to expand on that at all from your perspective?
I'm just going to go back to as an example. If you've got a $20,000 claim, which is kind of on the low end of the claims that we're seeing or the amount of damage that we're seeing from these floods, you immediately, if you hire a contractor, there's $4,000 there that the contractor gets paid for handling your project. It makes your life and your process easier to have it handled that way. And again, these are simple things that as a professional contractor we can do to help make the process easier on you, the homeowner.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, now here's a term I've seen before, and I need you to help unpack this a little bit. Recoverable depreciation. What is it, and when do I get it?
Well, that's a great question, because anytime somebody hears depreciation, they assume, well, I've lost money. That's, I can't get that back. And in the insurance world, I don't even like the fact that they call it depreciation. I always like to call it the holdback. And I'll let James kind of explain it. All they're really doing is holding it back for a later time, to where you can prove that you actually made the repairs. So
Yeah, so the reason that they use the term depreciation is because they do that over time. Carpet, it takes on wear, paint takes on wear, and everything generally depreciates by either age or condition. So the insurance company determines which method they're going to use for measuring the amount of depreciation against your claim for the building materials that were affected in your loss. And so if they have that holdback, like Scott's saying, the reason that they do that is because typically there's a mortgage company or somebody else that has an investment in the property as well. And so because it's insured for a certain amount of money prior to the loss, they want to make sure that that comes back up to that value and that repairs are actually performed. So they hold back a percentage of what it takes to perform the repairs on the property, so that at the end you get to prove to them, hey, I put my house back to its original condition prior to the loss, and now I need to be given those recoverable depreciation or that holdback so that I can finish paying my contractor for his services.
Or is that kind of a fail safe or a net for them, that those funds are sitting over there?
Well, what it kind of does is it prevents people from seeing a large dollar amount and going, hey, I could just take this money and not do anything with my house.
And quite
Mm,
frankly, back
mm.
in 2008 and 2009, when houses had lost a lot of value, banks ended up in really dire situations with properties that had insurance claims. The homeowner took the check and basically walked away from the property. So, and we may even touch on this, James, that a lot of times your mortgage company has to be involved in this process, and we want to make sure that the mortgage company, that we know what the processes are for the mortgage company. Otherwise, it's going to slow down the payment of the funds.
Yes, and the mortgage company, if they have enough um, investment in it, they may have something already involved with your insurance carrier that says that, hey, we actually need to be put on the check so that we approve where those funds are going, what's happening with them.
Mm-hmm. And
Scott,
they may require additional documentation from the contractor, such as in a lot of
Mhm.
cases, they'll ask for our certificate of insurance and a W-9 form and things like that. So again, when you're hiring a professional, we have those forms at the ready so that we can send those out as soon as they request them. Again, the idea is to help speed along and make the process easy.
Yes.
Scott, I just want to give you ample time if you wanted to expand on that at all. You said maybe we might touch on that some more. We're doing good on time. If you want to do that, I've got two more questions left, but I just want to make
Sure.
sure that you felt like you got that covered, and especially as it relates to the customer and what it can mean for them. So, you feel like you
Sure.
covered that, or is there anything else on that subject you wanted to delve in a little more?
Well, just know this: if your mortgage company is involved, it's going to slow down the process, because they've got some checks and balances in place to make sure that things are, that their interests are protected. And one of those may be they may require a an inspector to come out to before they release funds, to make sure that there's a certain amount of work that's been completed or along the process. They may have a joint pay check that requires their signature as well as yours in order to get the payments going, and they may require additional paperwork. If you have one of those situations, you want to take some time, find out what the process is. The good mortgage companies have a written policy that they can send you that will tell you, here's the steps that you need to take. Make sure you've got good communication between you and your contractor as to what that process is, so that nobody has any surprises along the way. I've been involved in several projects where that wasn't communicated to me, and then at the end of the project, we're still waiting there for final payment, or we're having to wait to finish a certain little last bit, and we're waiting on an inspector to come in and look at the project, and that's holding up the homeowner from being able to either move back into their house or to enjoy their house. So again, these are stumbling blocks along the way. We want to clear that path so that when the actual repair starts in your home, we can move right on through it.
So, Scott, for those that haven't seen any of your videos or haven't spoken with you or worked with you, this can seem like a daunting process. you are a big advocate of having literally an advocate for you, and that is one of the things that I think you pride yourself with Simmons, and that is, do they get you kind of as this concierge to help them navigate the waters of this process? Is this the kind of stuff that you would be walking them through and prepping them, or do you give them a sheet and said, okay, here's steps 1 through 12, and we'll check back with you later, or speak just a little bit to that process and why
Well,
that's important to
quite
have
frankly,
somebody.
Chris, it's going to be a combination of both. We've got some processes in place that we're happy to provide you with in writing so that you have something to follow. Each of our projects that we accept has a project manager that's assigned to it, and that person is responsible for the project from start all the way to finish. They'll be there to help you know what the scheduling is, help you with selecting the products, help you with knowing what products you need to be selecting at different times along the way. So we think we've got a really good process in place. And then as far as the advocate goes, I'll let James address that. He's done just a fantastic job in dealing with adjusters. And I like his thinking is more along it's not like I have to butt heads with the adjuster. His thinking is more along the lines of I've got to give the adjuster enough information to see this my way so that he can approve the things that I need to have approved. Where I think a lot of contractors are more in the boat of I've just got to fight this guy. Fighting never accomplishes much. And I'll let James kind of tell you a little bit about his process in advocating for the customer with the adjusters.
Yeah, so there are a lot of contractors out there that will look at a project and think to themselves, okay, so this section of cabinets is damaged, and I know that I have to replace those cabinets. The trouble with that is that there's backsplash sitting on top of granite countertops. The granite countertops in question are in the area of the sink. Most obviously, if you're going to have a water loss in a house, it's going to be somewhere that there's plumbing present. So the sink is one of the most common areas that you'll have or suffer one of those losses. And unfortunately, in a solid surface countertop, they've cut out a large hole for the sink to go. And so you've only got three or so inches in the front or back of that area. And those countertops are glued down with a very strong sealant. So when you go to detach and reset those countertops, those sometimes break. Now, a contractor can look at that and think to themselves, well, that's going to break when I pull it out. So I'm going to put in for replacement of countertops. And then they turn that into an insurance adjuster, and the adjuster looks at it and goes, well, the countertop's not damaged. Why would I need to pay for that? So the way that I like to look at this is for what I can do to show the adjuster that I am willing to work with them and only estimate for what is visibly damaged at the time. So we know that the cabinets are damaged. The countertops, though, we can put in just a detach and reset them. I mean, we know that has to happen. So it's an easier thing for the adjuster to look at and say, okay, this guy's not trying to just go in and rip out countertops without being careful. He's going to attempt to detach and reset the existing countertop. It's much easier for an adjuster to approve something like that, but once they've applied coverage to the countertop. They've applied coverage that they're going to accept the fact that if this is detached and reset and it breaks in the process, they've applied coverage to it, and therefore this is resulting damage that has happened to the project as a result of their approval for work that they've said is okay to perform. So when the countertop actually damages or breaks, in the event that it does, not that anybody's trying to, but it does break, the countertop is continuous around the kitchen, and they owe for pre-loss condition. So if they had matching countertops throughout prior to the loss, if we can't match that section of slab, we'll need to go ahead and replace all of the kitchen countertops.
I like the fact that you used the countertop example, James, because that's probably one of the situations we run into most.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain that countertops are meant to be installed, like granite or quartz. They're built to be installed. They are not built to be detached and removed. Okay, they're just
they're there for good.
They're there for good, really. And so we can try, but it doesn't always work out that way. About 50% of the time they end up breaking on us, and there's just nothing we can do about that. So the insurance company, I think, is aware of that. And you just, you make them aware at the time it breaks. We take a couple of pictures of broken countertop, send it in, and send you down to pick out some new ones. So
Excellent.
That's right.
All right, 2 more, boys. Number 6 says the insurance estimate says that if the contractor's estimate is higher, they may not pay the difference. Would that be something that I'm going to get stuck with?
I'm going to turn that one straight to James.
Yeah, so there is underwriting in the policy that states that if a homeowner does decide to go ahead and move forward with a contractor or start beginning repairs without knowing that they've got an agreed cost of repairs from the insurance carrier, that they may not cover those costs. So it's always best for the homeowner, if they've received an estimate from a contractor that is higher than what the insurance company has written for, which in most cases that's going to be what's going on, mostly because the insurance company is writing something based off of a lack of information, whereas the contractor has visited the site and measured everything accurately, is turning in all the line items that are necessary to put that back into proper condition. So no, that wouldn't be something that you'd have to pay for out of pocket. What we do is we provide them with the right amount of information so that we can come to an agreed cost of repairs prior to starting the repairs. If we start the repairs prior to there being an agreed cost of repairs, it's harder to tell if there's going to be anything out of pocket. And that's why we always go through the proper steps, proper channels, and perform all the right things in order as they're supposed to be, so that we're not putting the customer at any risk of having any expense out of pocket other than their deductible, which should be their only obligation.
Yeah. So seeing that initially is not something to necessarily fret over or freak
Yes,
out.
don't get upset about it. Just understand that your contractor is going to work with the insurance adjuster to come to an agreed cost of repairs prior to starting the work.
And I think from the homeowner's standpoint, sometimes this is hard to understand, though, James. They've got a check from the insurance company. They're saying, hey, I've got this money. Why can't you go ahead and start my project? I just want to get my house back. And I appreciate that. But we don't want to actually start the project until we have the agreed upon cost of repairs. And again, in a lot of cases, that's almost double what your insurance company has put on the table to begin with. And the reason we want to do that is we want to protect your interests so that you're not left owing money because we didn't get the approvals prior to actually starting the project.
That's exactly how that works.
Yeah.
I've got a small project. Well, it's around $60,000. And we were apart about $50. And the $50 was for 2 supply lines and a P trap. The insurance company said, I'm not paying those. Those were not damaged by water. And I had to let them know, well, no, they weren't damaged by water, but you did apply coverage to them. You did say that we were allowed to detach and reset those items. And they have gaskets. Those gaskets have now been hardened. They're not a soft, rubbery fixture like they were when they were originally installed. And the reason that they're soft when they're originally installed is so that they can compress to a fit the plumbing that they're fastened to. Well, once that's detached, you've now got a hardened gasket that was only compressed to a specific standard. When you go to put that hardened gasket back into place, it's more likely to split or fail. And so now you're at risk or creating liability for an additional water loss. And so even after explaining that to the insurance adjuster, they're going, hey, I'm going to draw my line in the sand over this $50. Sorry, you're going to have to eat it. If you want to do that, the homeowner's going to have to pay it. So one way or another, what we did on that instance was we went ahead and we said, okay, fine. We're going to put the new supply lines, the new P traps in anyway, because it's what's best for our customer.
Right.
$50 is a drop in the bucket.
$60,000 claim, and you're haggling over $50. But that's just the world we live in, right?
But
Right.
you also see right there why you want James being your advocate, right?
I'm like,
you
I
want him on your side.
Because that's the point where I really want to just punch somebody. I want to go, really? Okay. Last question for the show is, why is there another company on my check? What's the deal here? Who are these people?
Well, and I may have jumped the gun when we talked about the mortgage situation, so I'll let James answer this, but we probably took things a little bit out of order. That's my fault.
Yeah. So the additional company being on the check is typically going to be your mortgage carrier or whoever has an investment in your property. So we kind of already touched base on this and jumped ahead of the last question, but that's why somebody will be on your check, is if you have a mortgage or something like that. And it's at that point, as soon as you do receive that check, you're going to want to start looking into the process of what you need to do in order to release those funds so that you can move forward with your property getting
That
fixed.
makes total sense. Makes total sense. When you go through this and you hear from guys like yourself, it seems so simple. But I think when you're on the other side of the table and I mean, let's face it, you're still dealing with the shock of all that's happened to you, and so you're going through the stages of grief in a sense. And so, I know Scott, you talked about it many times. You feel like part of your role is a bit of a counselor,
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
once you have this, just like anything, once you have the information, you can relax a lot more, and you're not so panicked when another name shows up on the check, or it's got double what you thought or half of what you thought. It's just all these things we've been talking about today. Um, to have somebody in your corner to turn to them and go, what do I do with this? Or more importantly, to be prepared. And I know that's
Right.
what you guys preach all the time, and that's just to be prepared so that you don't get caught off guard with
Right.
some of these things. So, Scott,
Well,
I'm gonna let you kind of talk about anything else you want to cover on this subject before we wrap things up. Is there something else that
well,
we haven't
I
covered?
think just along the lines you were talking about there, Chris, is when it comes to insurance claims, this is not something that you do every day. It's something that you may have to do once, twice, three times in your entire life. And if you're trying to do it on your own, or you're trying to do it with somebody that's not familiar with the processes and knows the rules of the game, you're putting yourself at a distinct disadvantage. And whether you choose to go with Simmons or someone else, I'm just encouraging everybody, become educated, but have somebody there that's been there. In our case, this is what we do every day. So when somebody has a question, not only can we answer the question, but we can answer it because we've had this situation come up time and time and time and time again. Those are the kind of companies you want to align yourself during this time, because in a lot of cases, you're talking about large dollar losses. In general, right now, our average loss that we're seeing is at least $30,000, and many of them are over $60,000. That involves a lot of money and involves a lot of the value of your home. So make sure that you spend some time, get to know a professional, let them take care of it. The funds should be there to be able to handle it with a professional, but go ahead and use a professional in this kind of situation. You're going to be much, much better off.
So, Scott, as we're wrapping things up, how can folks get a hold of you if they have more questions? They
Sure.
don't know where to turn to. How can they get a hold of you and or James to help answer some of their questions
Just
further?
just call our store. It's 940-566-6169. Or you can catch us on the web at simmonsfloors.com. And either way, just put in Simmons Floors or Simmons Total Renovation. We're going to pop up there in your Google. Call us, and yeah, we'll be happy to meet with you and help you with putting together an estimate, getting everything documented, and start the reconstruction process.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we're going to continue to do these videos. Scott, do you have an idea of maybe, can you tease at all what we might be covering in the next upcoming videos at all?
I got to sleep before I come up with the next idea, Chris.
You're not allowed to do that until this whole thing. I don't know if this thing is ever going to end
No,
at this
it's
rate.
going to be
I
a
don't
while.
know. James, always a pleasure to have you, my friend. Is there any last words, bits of wisdom you want to give the masses? I mean, you look fantastic on camera, by the way. I just don't know if the camera loves you.
That's great.
I love it. Okay. Save water, drink wine. That's the thought for the day. And make sure that you have an advocate on your side like Simmons Flooring and Renovation. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Wonderful to see
Thanks.
you guys. And we will catch up with you guys soon. We'll be doing this weekly. And we hope that you will stay tuned to the podcast Fix My Flood, Ask the Experts. Easy for me to say. You guys have a great day.